Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Lincolnshire Integrated Care Partnership. Can we have apologies for absence, please, Katrina?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Bowkett, Elaine Bayliss and Philip Clark. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other apologies that anyone's aware of? No? Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Sorry, Kevin Lockyer, Chair of LPFT.
Thank you. Can we move on to item 2, the declaration of members' interests? Are there any declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of September. Can we just go through those minutes, just page by page for accuracy? Page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10. Can I have a show of hands to accept those minutes? Everyone in agreement? Thank you. Any disagreement? Any abstentions? No. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is the action log. Again, just for noting, everybody content with that? No disagreement? Okay. Move on to item 5, which are the chairman's announcements. And again, I don't propose to go through those. Have to say though, Sarah, I had a really great visit up to the new build at the Peter Hodgkinson Centre. Really going to be a fabulous facility once it's up and running. So thank you for making that available.
Just to add that we've been successful in securing funds to take forward our business case for the Boston rebuild as well. So
great news.
Great news. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on then to one of our main items then, item 6, which is the Lincolnshire Integrated Care Strategy, and this is the interim one, and so it's a work in progress, and I'd like to introduce Michelle Andrews and Pete Burnett. I don't know which one's going to start first, but over to you two.
Thanks, Chair. It's me starting today, so hopefully we'll just go through a presentation that's going to articulate how we got to where we are, the work that's been involved in the strategy development today, and then a framework of the strategy that we aim to publish in December. So, next slide. So I think we're aware we discussed in the previous meeting the Health and Wellbeing Board that we end up with 2 strategies because we're co-terminus. We have the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy, which we are refreshing, and the plans to do further work on that in 2023. And we also have an integrated care strategy because we're one of 3 systems nationally that are co-terminus with the Health and Wellbeing Board. It's clear that there's a need to make sure you're clear on what strategy is which. There is a need to have different ones. And as you're all aware, we determined it in the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy is the what. So what are the health needs and the health priorities of Lincolnshire? And the integrated care strategy is setting out the how. So how are we going to work together around some key enablers for the system that we'll focus on in an effort to kind of integrate our approach and kind of deliver the kind of joint health and wellbeing board strategy. So that's how we've separated the 2 strategies because we need to have 2 separate strategies, but we're trying to make sure there's a strong alignment between them both as we possibly can. So I wanted to thank everyone who's been involved in the engagement and development of the strategy to date, because a lot of you have been involved, and a lot of your colleagues and your teams have been involved in that, and that's helped enrich kind of where we are in the short space of time that we've had to kind of produce the strategy for the December publication. So we've had the engagement event on the 2nd of November, which I believe most of you are at, and that really helped, as obviously it went through the kind of health needs of the population, but really helped us kind of hone in on kind of what are the key enablers that we want to focus on within the county, and we had obviously vast number of not just the sales, but people from the voluntary and community sector there that helped shape kind of what are we going to focus on going forward. in that regard. And then we took the information from that workshop, and that became the framework for the strategy as we went forward. We've also had an integrated care partnership strategy involvement group that has involved range of people from across the ICS. We've had 2 meetings to date, one in October, one in November. We've got 2 meetings this week, again, to go through the strategy, and they've been helpful. We've walked them through elements of it, and they've helped inform and shape it. And I'll explain a bit like that about how we've done that going forward. But they've gone through it and helped kind of make sure it is in line with what their thinking was. Is it in line with the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy from their viewpoint and the agendas they're looking to take forward? We've liaised with enabler leads, so as we hone down the enablers, which we'll touch on, we've worked with the key kind of system leads in those areas to make sure actually what we put in the strategy aligns with their thinking and aligns with the approach that we're planning to take across the system. And also the Joint Health and Wellbeing Board strategy priority leads have also been engaged to ensure there's that alignment between both documents going forward. So ambition and aims then. So this thankfully does align back to the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy refresh and kind of this, the kind of life cycle approach. The only principal difference from this, and this came out of the involvement group, so our ambition aim is, the ambition is for the people of Lincolnshire to have the best possible start in life and be supposed to live, age and die well. And die well was included from the involvement group. I'm happy to have people's views on that, but actually the people around the table said, look, there's an inevitability in life, and we do want to, we shouldn't ignore it and add it in that sense. And that's why that's came in. And then we looked to go, what are our shared aims? So those of you who're close with ICS guidance and national legislation will know that the Department of Health and Social Care identify kind of 4 core purposes of an ICS. And when we looked at them, we thought, well, they're great, but they're not in line with what we necessarily, entirely in line with what we need to do in Lincolnshire. And we looked back at the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy, which has kind of 4 aims that align to those 4 core purposes. So our aims are in line with the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy, which are the focus on prevention, early intervention, tackling inequalities, delivery, transformation, change, and to take collective action. So we put them in to align with that, and then to move that forward. And so what does that mean for the public, and what's it mean for partners? We developed a schematic which tries to kind of identify this, which move on. So this is as we all know, the purpose is to continue to develop this strategy. This is the interim as we go into with the Health and Wellbeing Board refresh. But at the top here, we've got the ambition for the system as described, and then we have those 4 core aims, and then we have measures that we work with public health and with colleagues across the system on to say, okay, well, how will we measure, are we achieving those aims? And although they're not set in stone, they are, as they stand at the moment in time, the key will be to kind of refine this as we go through the refresh period into next year. Then we have the Health and Wellbeing Board priorities as identified in the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy. And then at the bottom of the document, which is the focus of the ICP strategy, is the core enablers. And this came out of that session on the 2nd of November. So we have population health and prevention as a kind of overarching life cycle approach, which is in line with the refreshed Health and Wellbeing Board strategy. And then 4 core other enablers underneath, which is around workforce and skills, personalisation and personalised care, community engagement and involvement, and information systems. So I'm going to hand over to Michelle now, who's going to take you through each of those enablers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pete. So, as we've said, the work we've done with colleagues across the system, both at the workshop and through the involvement group and the work with the individual leads, has allowed us to develop a set of enablers that we think are the greatest priority for Lincolnshire. As Pete said, if you look at the guidance, there are a large number of enablers set out that ICSs should consider, and we feel that these 5 from those discussions are the 5 that make the most sense for us and will enable us to collectively come together to achieve the ambitions, whether there are current priorities or whether there are future ones as they may change and evolve as we move forward. So looking at the population health and prevention, we feel this is the golden thread that runs through the strategy and underpins all of the work that we do together across health and well-being, and will support us to tackle the inequalities that we believe are in certain elements of our population, and link very much back to the comments made by Derek earlier with regard to our information that we have available to us. With regard to workforce and skills, this was quite an in-depth conversation that was quite a strong feeling around this, and it was very much around our critical enabler to enable our workforce and the skills we have within it, not just within our health and care system, which we know there are gaps and we are challenges in recruitment, but what we also have is a wider ambition around our workforce and the skills that are available within the county, because we know that if people have a fulfilling job, a well-paid job, that their home life and their well-being is much is much rounder, and so we want that to be much broader than just our health and well-being and care sector. With regard to personalisation and personalised care, the greater integration around and the opportunity to enhance choice is obviously something that we really want to focus on within certain parts of the system, and the flexibility for people to play a key role in the decision making about the care that they receive. And then with regard to the community engagement involvement, as we've talked about today, and I know Councillor Bradwell mentioned this earlier, is making sure that the information we have available is accessible, is meaningful to our communities and the people we want to engage with, and actually that this is something that all professionals can own and play a part in as we go forward. The information and information systems does link back to the population health and prevention and the information we want to use to inform our services that we develop, deliver and commission. But equally it's broader than that. It's around the information on a personal level that people want to be able to have more ownership over, but equally information that organisations will jointly own and share to drive forward improvement in the services that we have available. Next slide, please. So within these elements that we will present within the strategy as we evolve, there'll be very much themes within each of those. The population health and prevention, again, will start at preconception, move through infancy and early years. We know the importance of these early years within the child's life and for parenthood, moving through child adolescence, schools and working across the system for the 5 to 19-year-olds. And then when we move into working age and ageing well, and then obviously as we move into end of life support and care, we want that population health prevention to go all across the life course approach that then links into our health and wellbeing strategy and the other work that we're doing within our public health. So with workforce and skills section, we'll look to really focus on the work and the helping young people to support and stay in our area rather than lose some of those skills to other areas of the country. We want to retain those and really inspire our young people to stay and work in Lincolnshire and then grow, have a family and be happy and healthy. As we move then to the training and support of people who are already in the workforce and what we can do to increase some of our workforce and some of the gaps within that, the workforce, as that links into the presentation that Sam did earlier. Thank you. So as we move to personalisation, we want this section to really develop and the shared decision making across the system, look at how that patient activation and the self-management and also look at how the community-based support is available consistently across the county and how we make the best of what's called social prescribing, which is the work to enable self-help within the local area and also then linked to all the community support that's available across the county. Enabler 4 will look to focus on consultation, engagement and collaboration with our communities and also with our professionals across the system, building those community networks, linking into the volunteering. And we know within COVID-19 and the pandemic, the work of our volunteering sector really supported us through that period of time, and we want to enhance that and develop that. and also then looking at the funding for our communities and utilising tools and data effectively. So when we look at information, there's a wide range of information that we'll need available to share appropriately and professionally, organisationally, and making sure that we work through this section to develop some of the systems and processes that are robust, that help us all focus on the shared goals and the shared understanding of our direction of travel. So with regard to how does this fit together, so if we just think back to the slide that Pete showed with the graphic earlier in the slide deck, what we had was the orange themes and the priorities, within the health and wellbeing strategy, and they'll continue to report through those delivery mechanisms through to the Health and Wellbeing Board. And as Alison said, we're strengthening that governance and bringing those collective ambitions and priorities together. And then what we're looking to do is develop the integrated care partnership, and these enablers will want these to be brought together across the system for lead groups to come forward, to have direction of travel and report into the integrated care partnership, the challenges, the benefits, and some of the new ways of working that we feel will help us capitalise on this and bring the two together in, as Pete says, our coterminous system. So the next steps are the national guidance acknowledges that this year and into 2023 is that transitional year when the new systems are really getting to develop. We're looking to have the interim strategy over the next couple of weeks into an interim arrangement that we feel is able to publish once we've had engagement across the system. We'll then look to develop that further, enhance some of those arrangements and allow the ICS to mature and those relationships to be embedded. And then we'll look, as Alison and colleagues have said, at how the JSNA, the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, and the review of the health and wellbeing strategy come together to coordinate and avoid duplication and gaps in this, what is a complex system. We'll look at a wide-ranging programme of engagement with partners, stakeholders and public for 2023. And then what we'll want to do is revisit this within 2023. So by the end of 2023, we're confident that this reflects the needs of the communities that we're serving across the county. So for today, what I want to try and do is, as we said within the report attached, is ask for people to note the process and the steps we've taken with regard to the integrated care strategy. We're happy to take feedback both today and outside the meeting for anybody who wants to engage with myself and Pete via email or in person. We're happy to also do that. And what we want to then do is provide you with an opportunity in the future to feed into the interim strategy so we can develop that into 2023 into a longer term approach for the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Pete. And before I offer it for questions, can I just thank you both on behalf of us all for all the work that you have put in. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? And a hell of a lot of work. And but I think the icing on the cake was the email that I copied you into just before this meeting started, in that I think it's NHS Confed and the Department of Health, they've been saying, you know, got to get this draft strategy there or thereabouts to inform the 5-year plan. And now they've just sort of taken the foot off the gas and gone, well, it's not exactly a legal position, and so it would be useful and it would be helpful, because I think obviously everywhere else they're really struggling. But you know, we're really fortunate to have two great officers that have made sure that we will get ours in on time. So thanks very much indeed for that. Questions, anyone? Hugo.
Thank you. I mean, that's a very good report, and I think you've covered most things in great detail, and it links in well and it reads well. My only thing which I think's potentially missing is actually, if you go right to the very beginning on prevention, the one thing we never ever talk about is actually individuals should look after themselves. You know, we fundamentally, here we are sort of talking about the sort of concept of focusing on the symptoms and not the causes, but actually all of this is about actually people getting lazy and not actually not also lazy. I think the whole, what's healthy eating now? Most of us have, it's got lost. Coffee's good for you, coffee's bad for you. This is good for you, that's bad for you. And in the end, we contradict so much that the public actually doesn't really know where it stands. And I think we need to sort of bring back that public should take ownership of looking after yourself, because otherwise you're going to be on a slippery slope of ill health. And we are always and getting worse at trying to rectify everything, and the NHS and everyone else has to suffer because people have stopped taking respect of their own bodies. And I think that we should always drive that agenda in the prevention.
Thank you, Hugo.
And it hurts to do it, by the way. I mean, I try and look after myself, and it's not an easy task. It really, you know, you go through the pain barriers, and I have to give up cake periodically and can't have it every day. It does come with sacrifice. But once you get in the mode, actually you can deal with it and you can have everything you want, but you just don't have McDonald's every day.
Or cake. Okay, thank you for that. John.
Thanks. I've got some completely separate points to make from Hugo's there, so you might want to come back on Hugo's, or Derek might want to comment, I guess. So firstly, just to underline Sue's points, you two have done a brilliant piece of work here, and it was only, a month ago that we had that session in Sleaford, and that was, you know, a broad leadership session across the whole sort of public and broader partnership across the whole of the county. So I think we're really, really well positioned to. I've heard as well that other parts of the country are struggling to pull things together. Fine, but you know, we're responsible for Lincolnshire, aren't we? I think we're in a good place here. So and Pete, I know you and I have had a number of conversations about this over the past couple of weeks as well. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts as I've heard it this afternoon. Firstly, our 4 purposes are slightly different from the ICS core purposes. I mean, 2 seem to me to be exactly the same, and 2 are variation really to accommodate, you know, our health and wellbeing board. I think in the final bit we do need to find a way to accommodate the 4 core purposes of the ICS within this, or I guess that, you know, there might be some commentary back from that. So let's just head that one off a little bit, but I do completely get why our 4 are changed from the Health and Wellbeing Board, and that makes perfect logical sense to me. I like the 5 key enablers, and I recognise those from the session we had in Sleaford, and I like the fact that we're going to put population health and prevention as a sort of golden thread throughout. That makes sense, and I suppose implicit, but I wonder if explicit in that, you know, there's something about health inequalities in that as well. But I really, really like that. I didn't quite hear in the presentation what I took from the Sleaford session in 2 aspects, really. So it might just have been, this might just be me, but on workforce and skills, there was a particular issue which you did capture about what I call animating health and care careers in Lincolnshire for our children and young people going through education, so that, you know, we really try and support and drive them towards working in health and care in the county in the most positive way possible. What I didn't quite pick up though was I thought we had a particular issue about the working age adult population, and particularly those people in that population who actually aren't working at the moment for a variety of reasons, many of which are health, whether it's mental health, MSK or whatever. And I thought we wanted to particularly prioritise supporting those people back into the workforce, as well as the broader point that you referred to. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, on digital, I heard an absolute plea for us to share our business intelligence across all of the partners. So Andy's public health intelligence need to be matched with district council's intelligence, with the voluntary sector's intelligence, with the Police and Crime Commissioner's office intelligence, and that's different from the digital enabling bit as I see it in the way you've just described it. So I'd like to see just that picked up, please. I didn't see in this the key points like smoking and pregnancy and obesity in young children, but I guess that they will hang off the frame that you've really well articulated. And finally, I think we absolutely recognise in Lincolnshire, it is referred to in the session as well, that we need to have a local focus around our communities. So it comes back to an earlier conversation we had at Health and Wellbeing Board. You know, some things need to be Lincolnshire wide, but some things need to be particularly nuanced around particular communities within Lincolnshire, be they geographical communities or other communities as well. So, having said that, in my mind, the work is looking really strong. Clearly a bit more iteration to go, but I'm really pleased with the way it's shaping up. I think our minds need to turn quite quickly now into the mobilising the arrangements that are necessary to breathe life into this work programme. And I think we as an ICP need to be confident that the way in which we're putting that together is big enough to meet the size of the challenges that we've got. So whilst in some instances, you know, current working groups might be absolutely adequate, I think there are other areas where we need to sort of really, you know, power it up a little bit. And I think we should be doing that on the principle of sort of different distributed leadership across the whole partnership as well. So as an example, on the children and young people careers bit, I don't think that's necessary for the county council or the NHS to be leading on. There are others in our partnership who I think are far better placed than certainly I am to really drive all of that forward. So whilst we're in the process of over the next couple of weeks just finalising this draft strategy, I say we're in a great place. I wonder, colleagues, if we can turn our minds to, you know, defining the programmes of work, being clear about who needs to be leading that, who needs to be centrally involved in that, so that once we step into the new year, you know, we can actually be getting on to the front foot in terms of, as I say, mobilising, taking those actions forward. But this is great work. It really, really is. So all of my comments are made in that context. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, John. Michelle, do you want to come back? And then Richard.
Yes, I'll just come back on John's point though. I think the purpose of today was to give the headlines. So I think all of the things that you've just highlighted, I recognise from the discussions, agree and should and will be included in any, you know, in the iterations going forward. Mindful that we're at a point in time and there's lots of colleagues still need to have input into that. And thank everyone. I think Pete and I are the coordinators of this, not the architects. So I think thank you for everyone who's contributed so far on that. I think picking up, you know, on the point before that, I think you're absolutely right. Self-help, key messages consistently across all organisations about how you can look after yourself well, whether that's, you know, on a budget or, you know, all of the other challenges that people and families and residents will face over the coming months. I think we need to incorporate, but having many organisations giving you different messages is really hard, as you say, to digest and understand which is the most important. So coming together collectively and giving some clear, concise messages about these are the most important things you can do for yourself and your family, whether that's your parents or your children, I think are something we can really easily do as we go forward together.
Thank you, Michelle. Richard.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with all the comments made about the work. But I just wanted to pick up on something that John said with regards to young people into care, and also the fact about the working age adults, in that we've got certain people of the working age who are not economically engaged, not through ill health, but because they choose not to be, because they've moved into the county in huge numbers and for various reasons don't need to work. So whilst we've got a shortfall, then perhaps we should be looking at, not a workforce, but a care force. How do we try and engage people, even on a voluntary basis or part-time, to actually fill some of those gaps, which they might do if we sell it in the right way, because we do know there are large numbers of people that are there, that so they can only play bowls so many days a week. There's got to be something else that we can engage them with. So, and it's not a small number; it's a substantial number.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Michelle, or fine? Okay. Any other question? It's Emma.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle and Pete. A number of comments I made, actually, John picked up, because I remember those conversations in Sleaford, particularly about workforce, and I just think it's important that we define who we're talking about when we talk about workforce, which I know was a conversation we had in Sleaford. But a couple of other things I wanted to pick up as well. I think interesting to hear about the mobilisation piece, and a key challenge stroke opportunity, I think, is going to be about mobilising our own organisations and getting the buy-in to this, because we recognise that we've had some really positive conversations at this level, relatively small numbers of people, and for a very small organisation, I can tell you it's really hard work to try and engage with all of your teams who might not have bought into the strategy in the same way that we all have. So I think it's just a plea to really consider how we can make sure that our own workforces are mobilised and are brought into this, so that when we all want our people to make those connections and to start working together in different ways, they've kind of got the permission to do that, and they know why they're doing that, because sometimes I think there are unintentional barriers, and I think this is about removing those barriers and making sure that everybody understands the opportunity to work together in this way. And the second point was around communication, and in part that's the B2B comms piece, and in part the kind of consumer resident communication piece, and all of our evidence shows that residents are confused at the moment. There's lots of mixed messages out there. It's really important that we think about who the messenger is and what messages we're telling. And I just think across probably health and wellbeing strategy and this strategy, there's a piece that might be missing at the moment, or that doesn't feel particularly visible to me, in terms of how we bring some communication leads together to make sure that we get the comms piece right.
I think that's a really, really important point, Emma, and thank you for highlighting it. Any more questions, anyone? Is there anything, Michelle or Pete, you'd like to come back on?
Just to say, I think the comms piece is crucial. That work into next year around how we engage with communities, how we engage with wider stakeholders on the Health and Wellbeing Board refresh strategy, and this is going to be crucial as we go into the next 12 months. So it is a point in time at this stage, and it's a really helpful kind of segue into that piece of work, but that communication is going to be critical to it. Yeah,
thank you. I think that's the thing, isn't it? That what we're doing now is just for the draft, isn't it? It's that once we can get this put to bed, then we can sort of breathe a little bit and then really get set in for next year to get everything refreshed where we want it to be. Okay, thank you. Before I move to the actions, can I also just mention that it's always the power behind the throne, isn't it, as well, that Alison too has played a significant part in putting this work together. So thank you, Alison. Okay. Actions then, A, B, C and D. Can we take them on block? Everyone in favour, please raise your hand. And anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Let's move on to the next item, which is item 7. The winter plan. I see Claire's name's down for this. Is she online?
No, it's going to be Pete and then Sunil leading on this one.
Okay, Pete and then Sunil.
Sunil will support when there's a clinical discussion to be had. He's better placed on that one. So so I take the paper as read, but I'm just going to go through how we got to where we got to with our our winter plan and its purpose and how we're going to monitor it going forward, really. So this started out, it's a collaborative piece of work that started in the late summer with all NHS providers, adult social care, working together on formulating the plan, and it was informed by, there's a UEC clinical summit that took place, and also informed by national best practice and guidance from NHS England, but also importantly, the system looked at its own data, looked at kind of the pressures we've had in previous winters, and also kind of the recent peak we've had in demand from COVID and respiratory illness in communities and that kind of stuff. So they're all formulated into the development of this winter plan for this year, which we know is going to be, as is documented nationally, is going to be pressured. The plan itself, as you've read, does not detail our core provision. That isn't its purpose, because we know what that is, but is designed to supplement the ongoing improvements and development in the urgent care as part of the national kind of operational planning process in that sense. And it highlights the predictions for winter demand and sets out our planned response with extra initiatives, capacity and information to manage urgent care and patient flow pressures that the system will obviously inevitably, unfortunately, have and see over that time. It itself is overseen by the Winter Resilience Oversight Group, and that is made up of executives from health and social care organisations. And they meet weekly and report into the UEC programme board, and also there's an ICB joint committee with providers, service delivery and performance committee, where the plan is being discussed at both kind of forums, and they will report in on a monthly basis to them to make sure actually we are delivering as the intent as we set out in it at this stage. This year, the focus of the plan is avoidance of patient harm by adopting an approach that focuses on clinical risk. And this came out of the clinical summit that Sunil chaired back in October as a key kind of thing. If we're going to approach this, what we're going to approach it is about that clinical risk and trying to reduce that. It sets out clear ambitions for Lincolnshire, which will be utilised to orientate and guide decision-making during the preparation for operational delivery over winter months. And there's an agreed set of actions and schemes that will be delivered during 2022 and 2023, and also describes the kind of governance mechanisms to help identify early issues and the need for tracking of course correction over that period, which is inevitably will unfortunately happen. There is a national EPRR exercise being run currently called Exercise Arctic Willow, and that is to stress test health and social care systems to respond to multiple kind of pressures in their locality. So that's across operational pressures, emergency issues, so that'd be winter pressures, industrial action, energy and medical supply disruption. That's taking place, and that will feed in to the plan because it is an agile plan. So the plan itself is now signed off. And therefore will continue to be updated based on the kind of input of that EPRR exercise, and other changes that take place will kind of changes to it will be made. And a case in point is the adult social care discussion that went to the Health and Wellbeing Board prior to this. That came out after this was signed off, and therefore it arrived after this winter plan was a final document, but will be reflected in the work of the teams going forward. So that's the oversight of where we've got to. I'm not sure, Sonny, if there's anything else you'd like to add to that.
Thanks, Pete. I think that's pretty comprehensive. From my point of view, it's all about the clinical risk and making sure the clinical pathways are as stable as they can be. One of the things I think we've learned is it can't be a plan, you sign it off and leave it. So we have a regular weekly check-in for all the clinicians just to make sure, is there something else we should be doing? Should we stop doing things? And thankfully that includes social care colleagues. Really key part of this is, can we keep more people at home safely, rather than having to end up in A&E and spend a long time there. From a clinical risk perspective, that's the wrong thing to do. So as much of that we can prevent, the better we'll be. It will be tricky, and I think the last thing I'd say is support from public health colleagues who've been helping, trying to identify when the peaks and troughs might occur. And there are patterns there, as we know, and we're trying to work with that information to sort of plan in an agile fashion of how we might cope with those peaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, Pete. Any questions for Mass?
Hello, it's not a question, it's just to add that the winter plan is in addition to the services that we already have. So these are additionality. I think it's really important to note that.
Thanks for that. Okay, Sue.
Madam Chairman, just a quick observation on the narrative to start the report. How, obviously laudable aims, but how will this be actually affected in practice by the industrial disputes that are looming? Because particularly with the ambulance service and also repopulating, the care homes and things like that with what we know about adult social care shortages in the care sector.
Sure.
Do you want to answer that?
Well, perhaps I'll start, and I wonder if then Andrew and Maz and Sarah might just want to make a comment as well. What I was going to say is there's a huge amount of work that's gone into this collectively across the health and care system. So it's not just in the NHS. And I think the overriding message is that our aspects of our services, particularly urgent and emergency care, A&E, urgent treatment centres, our ambulance services are under very significant pressure, and we're all working really hard together to meet that pressure as best as we possibly can, and we'll continue to do so. This is, as you just point out, things continuously change, and it isn't just about the plan, which is a great base, but it is that we're able to adapt and flex as we go forward. Things like making sure we continue to support our population in terms of the flu and the COVID vaccination programme are fundamentally important. We've done some great work on that in Lincolnshire so far, and we need to stay in that place. A&E pressures are here and live today, very, very significant at our acute colleagues. We've discussed just earlier, the social care 5 million or the 4.9 million and how we're deploying that. So it's a very, very live. And we have heard just actually earlier today about the ambulance service in industrial action and the date of the 21st, I think, of December, isn't it? Clearly EMAS are affected. I think I'm right in saying my trust chief execs will keep us right in that to date none of the other unions have passed the threshold in the trusts in Lincolnshire. So it is a point of some relief that our services aren't going to be affected by industrial action in our trusts in the same way that other areas are. So perhaps I'll pause there and just ask for colleagues to come in on the detail.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to repeat what John has said. And I think Sunil's right. The plan has to be a very dynamic plan as things change around us. You only have to look at the media at the moment to see just how busy the NHS is. And I think today's the sort of first day of real cold weather, so we can expect things to get quite challenging. We are all busy, and I think I can include all of us. It's not just about acute hospitals. I know my general practice colleagues, mental health community, everyone is really, really busy. From my perspective, going back to the previous meeting, the Health and Wellbeing Board, we survive on flow. We need to get the flow right such that those going through the front door are matched by those going out the back door. Otherwise, you get overly busy. We have got more capacity open today than we have ever had as a hospital, so it is already very, very busy. Going back to the industrial action question, just confirm what John said. The RCN and Unison ballots did not reach the required threshold in terms of the number of people who voted. Although there was an overwhelming majority of those who did vote were in favour of industrial action, they didn't reach the threshold of the total number of people who could have voted. So there will not be industrial action in, I think, my trust, LCHS or LPFT from RCN and Unison members. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Sarah?
Thank you. Not to repeat what Andrew said, but just a reflection really that for the past few years, we've been working under business continuity plans for large sections of time because of COVID and impacts on staffing. So it has given us some opportunities to test some of those business continuity plans in anger on a sustained basis. So lots of that learning has been fed into the winter planning round in terms of how to prioritise services and respond. So I just wanted to offer that reflection. Thank you.
Richard.
Thank you, Sue. Just with regards to cold and flu, obviously expecting the pressures there, just to say that there's still the chatter out there constantly about the messaging with regards to vaccinations. People are still getting conflicted by the messages they receive because you say you can use your phone or whatever, you get the message to get your vaccination, you agree to a local centre, and then you get another message inviting you to another appointment. So for some people it's still quite confusing. That's what we're still finding. There's conflicting, I think that's because of the national system or whatever it is. And with regards to EMAS, obviously we've seen the anticipated activity, but what, you know, do we hear the voice of EMAS? We know we generally hear what's going on around it, and that's normally when the news crews want to show the queue of ambulances sat outside their hospital, which they invariably do. But is there a better way of hearing the voice of EMAS so we can actually hear up front and perhaps be able to work with what's going on and get the messaging out with regards to the pressures on them, rather than just reporting on the so-called failures?
Thank you, Richard. I'll take your first comment back about the vaccination messages. I think it is just from different sort of parts of the service, but fundamentally is if you're offered an opportunity to go and get it, or them really, flu and COVID. In terms of EMAS, just to absolutely emphasise to you that we work hand in glove. Andrew, Sarah, Maz, general practice and my team work hand in glove with EMAS. I mean, effectively one team, aren't we, serving the whole of the county. So whilst EMAS themselves aren't members of the ICP or the Health and Wellbeing Board, absolutely assure you that we you know, it's day in, day out, sort of operational sort of working together. So they've been fundamentally involved in the planning of the operational of the winter plan and the work that happens day in, day out. I know that Andrew's team will be working very closely with them today because of all the pressures that they're under today. And you know, I work closely with the chief executive of EMAS, who happens to have a background as a paramedic in the county, which is really helpful. I think we're yet to hear of the precise details of the industrial action on the day. You know, what will be happening, what won't be happening from an EMAS perspective. Obviously, you know, their teams are working their socks off day in, day out across the whole of the county. But as those more precise details come through about what the impact will be on the 21st of December, then clearly we'll do all we can to make sure that we mitigate the impact as best we can for the county, and other actions may be taken by NHS England or the government nationally in relation to all of that as well. So I think there's a lot to play out over the next few days, to be honest. And also, just as a point of clarification, the RCN ballot within EMAS did actually pass the threshold. So I think is it GMB and EMAS as well as RCN having passed the threshold. Oh, okay. So, yeah, more to come out over the next few days. But again, the headline message is no matter what is thrown at us, you know, we have to respect the forces that there are around at the moment. Our job is to do all we possibly can to keep the people of Lincolnshire safe and well, and when they need urgent care, to be able to make to provide the best response we possibly can in the circumstances that we're facing. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, John. Any other comments at all? Or questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. Go to the action required, which is just to receive and note the winter plan for 22-23. I don't think we need voting on it, do we? we're noting. Show of hands, Katrina says. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Right. Moving on to the final item, which is the forward plan. And it's what it says on on the tin. Again, I would suggest that if you have any items that you really feel that we ought to be getting on the forward plan, please get in touch with Michelle or Pete or Alison. What we try and do is make sure that, as we have done today, that one meeting is perhaps slightly fuller than the other, and so as long as government and anybody else for that matter ensures that they don't keep dropping stuff on us last minute, hopefully we will start to come out the other end and be a little bit more prepared in future. But as best we can, then we will try and keep these meetings as succinct as possible, because it is necessary to, we're all busy people and don't want to pull you in for something else if we can get it all done in one afternoon. So I am grateful to you all for your time, your patience, and thank you very much indeed. And also, happy Christmas. Thank you. Meeting closed.